Hey everyone, welcome back. Make sure to like and subscribe and let someone else know that is trying to read an English novel, read a novel in English. This is not an English novel, it's a German novel. And who is maybe interested in this type of philosophy as well. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so as time went on, his, meaning Siddhartha's, smile began to resemble the ferryman's, that's Vasudeva. At the time, as time went on, his smile began to resemble the ferryman's, was almost equally as radiant, almost equally full of happiness, equally lighting up through 1,000 little wrinkles, equally childish, equally senile. Senile means when you get old and you start to lose your mind a little bit. So I think this is kind of joking a little bit that they are a little crazy. Many travelers, when seeing both ferrymen together, took them for brothers. What does it mean to take them for brothers? It means to mistake them for brothers or to assume that they are brothers. I saw two people together. They looked alike. I took them for brothers. That means I thought probably they are brothers. Often they sat together in the evenings on the tree trunk by the river. They both listened silently to the water, which to them was not just water, but the voice of life, the voice of being. What is being? We're talking about Atman and Brahman at this point. The voice of being, of perpetual becoming. And it sometimes happened that while listening to the river, they both thought the same thoughts, perhaps of a conversation of the previous day, or about one of the travelers whose fate and circumstances occupied their minds, or death, or their childhood. So sometimes they even thought the same thoughts. You caught that, right? And when the river told them something good at the same moment, they looked at each other, both thinking the same thought, both happy at the same answer and to the same question. Interesting. Something emanated from the ferry and from both ferrymen that many of the travelers felt. Okay, some people call this an aura, aura. When you see someone and they have like a glow around them, you can see what they're like. Or you go to a certain place and you feel something. I remember when I went to Notre Dame in Paris. I walked in and I felt something. Why? I'm from a Christian background, so I have this in my mind and I felt something. When I was by the river in Varanasi, I felt something. When I was in Kashmir and I went to the mountains, or when I went to one of the dargahs, I felt something. Something felt special. Well, when people see when they see the ferryman, they feel something, like an energy is emanating from them. Okay? It sometimes happened that a traveler, after looking at the face of one of the ferrymen, began to talk about his life and troubles, confessed sins, asked for comfort and advice. It sometimes happened that someone would ask permission to spend an evening with them in order to listen to the river. Excuse me one moment. It also happened that curious people came along who had been told that two wise men, magicians or holy men, lived at the ferry. So people are starting to think these are holy men. The curious ones asked many questions, but they received no replies. And they found neither magicians nor wise men. They only found two friendly old men who appeared to be mute, couldn't talk, rather odd and stupid. This is their feeling about them. And the curious ones laughed and said how foolish and credible people were to spread such wild rumors. So people were hearing that these were holy men. They'd go and see them and they're like, these are just stupid people. They're low people, right? The years passed and nobody counted them. Then one day, and nobody counted the years. Okay, so they're not keeping track of time. That happens as we get older and if we stay in one place. Then one day, some monks came along, followers of the Gautama, the Buddha, and they asked to be taken across the river. The ferrymen learned from them that they were returning to their great teacher as quickly as possible, for the news had spread that the illustrious one was seriously ill and would soon suffer his last mortal death and attain salvation. The Buddha was going to die. Not long afterwards, another party of monks arrived, and then another. And the monks, as well as most of the other travelers, talked of nothing but the Gautama and his approaching death. And as people come from all sides to a military expedition or to the crowning of a king, so did they gather together like swarms of bees, drawn together by a magnet, to go where the great Buddha was lying on his deathbed, where this great event was taking place, and where the savior of an age was passing into eternity. Siddhartha thought a great deal at this time about the dying sage whose voice had stirred thousands, whose voice he had also once heard, whose holy countenance, his look, his face, had also once looked at, whose holy countenance he had also once looked at with awe. He thought lovingly of him, remembered his path to salvation, and smiling, remembered the words he had once uttered as a young man to the illustrious one. It seemed to him that they had been arrogant, they meaning his words, had been arrogant and precocious words. For a long time he knew that he was not separated from the Gautama, although he could not accept his teachings. No, a true seeker could not accept any teachings. This is the story of Siddhartha. We've heard this over and over. A true seeker can't be taught what they learn. That's the story of Siddhartha. There's a couple things. Actually, there's a couple. True seekers cannot accept any teachings. They have to learn on their own. And the world speaks to you. Life speaks to you. 2, there's constant rebirth and return. Death, rebirth, and return. There is another is that there is an ultimate reality, that is Brahman. Brahman, right? These are the things that we keep hearing in Siddhartha, right? And maybe that you become different people too, right? Okay. No true seeker could accept any teachings, not if he sincerely wished to find something. But he who had found could give his approval to every path, every goal. Nothing separated him from all the other thousands who lived in eternity, who breathed the divine. Once someone achieved enlightenment, like the Buddha, they weren't separated from anyone in history that had also received it. This is somewhat similar if we look at Islam. All of the prophets of old, including Isa, Jesus, Musa, Moses, all of these that are in Islam, they are all prophets, right? They are all connected to each other through Allah and through through Islam, right? There's some similarity to that, though this is somewhat different, right? But there's some similarity. When someone achieves enlightenment, they are connected to all that have achieved enlightenment, the same way as both ferrymen are connected together by their experience of the river, right? One day, when very many people were making a pilgrimage to the dying Buddha, Kamala, once the most beautiful of courtesans, was also on her way. Again, rebirth and return. Here comes Kamala. She had long retired from her previous way of life and had presented her garden to the Gautama's monks. Taking refuge in his teaching, she followed the Gautama and belonged to the women and benefactresses attached to the pilgrims. A benefactor is someone that gives of their wealth to someone else, especially to a religious person. Or if I'm an artist, my benefactor will give me money so that I can keep being an artist. So she's a benefactress to the Gautama, to the Buddha. On hearing of Gautama's approaching death, she had set off on foot, wearing simple clothes together with her son. They had reached the river on her way, but the boy soon became tired. He wanted to go home, he wanted to rest, he wanted to eat. He was often sulky and tearful. Kamala frequently had to rest with him. He was used to matching his will against hers. She had taught him to be, we would say, precocious, where he doesn't accept what other people say. He challenges them. This is what she had taught him. She had to feed him, comfort him, and scold him. He could not understand why his mother had to make this weary, miserable pilgrimage to an unknown place, to a strange man who was holy and dying. Let him die. What did it matter to the boy? Right? We see this with our children, right? When we take them to the masjid, when we take them to the temple, the mandir, when we take them to the church, or wherever we take them, they don't understand, right? The pilgrims were not far from Vasudeva's ferry when the little Siddhartha told his mother he wanted to rest. Oh, so she has named him Siddhartha. So the boy's name is Siddhartha. Kamala herself was tired, and when the boy ate a banana, she crouched down on the ground, half closed her eyes and rested. Suddenly, however, she uttered a cry of pain. The boy, startled, looked at her and saw her face white with horror. The blood rushed from her face, we say. Her face was white. From under her clothes, a small black snake, which had bitten Kamala, crawled away. They both ran on quickly in order to reach some people. When they were near the ferry, Kamala collapsed and could not go any further. The boy cried out for help, meantime kissing and embracing his mother. She also joined in his loud cries until the sounds reached Vasudeva, who was standing by the ferry. He came quickly, took the woman in his arms, and carried her to the boat. The boy joined him, and they soon arrived at the hut where Siddhartha was standing and was just lighting the fire. He looked up and first saw the boy's face, which strangely reminded him of something. Then he saw Kamala, who he recognized immediately, although she lay unconscious in the ferryman's arms. Then he knew that it was his own son whose face had so reminded him of something, and his heart beat quickly. This is Siddhartha's son. Kamala's wound was washed, but it was already black, and her body had swelled. She was given a restorative, and her consciousness returned. She was lying on Siddhartha's bed in his hut, and Siddhartha, whom she had once loved so much, was bending over her. She thought she was dreaming and smiling. She looked into her lover's face. Gradually, she realized her condition, remembered the bite, and called anxiously for her son. "Do not worry," said Siddhartha. "He is here." Kamala looked into his eyes. She found it difficult to speak with the poison in her system. "You have grown old, my dear," she said. So now we learn that a lot of years have gone by. So probably 20 years went by from when Siddhartha was a samana to when he left being a merchant. And now probably another 10 or 20 years have gone by. Probably 20 years. And she says he looks old. "You have grown old, my dear," she said. "You have become gray. But you are like the young samana who once came to me in my garden, without clothes and with dusty feet. You are much more like him than when you left Kamaswami and me. Your eyes are like his, Siddhartha. I have also grown old. Old, did you recognize me?" Siddhartha smiled. "I recognized you immediately, Kamala, my dear." Kamala indicated her son and said, "Did you recognize him too? He is your son." His eyes wandered and closed. The boy began to cry. Siddhartha put him on his knee, let him weep, and stroked his hair. Okay, I think we'll finish next time. I'm going to stop here because otherwise I go on for too long. Okay, so he's back with Kamala, and we will end this chapter next time. Make sure to like and subscribe. Okay, see you.